Hi dear students, welcome to the next video. So today we'll be talking about shoulder region. The last class we saw the upper limb, the introduction and the pectoral region. So if you have not watched that video, please watch that and please subscribe the channel so that you don't miss the videos. Let's begin. Let's see the muscles of the scapular region or the shoulder region. So the shoulder region consists of the scapular region, in fact. So that has some muscles called deltoid muscle, supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor. Subscapularis is a muscle which is seen on the anterior aspect of the scapula. Teres major. Teres major is placed below the teres minor. This is teres major, teres minor. Let's see all these muscles in detail one by one. First muscle that we are going to consider here is deltoid. Deltoid is originating from anterior border of the lateral one-third of the clavicle, lateral border of acromion, crest of spine of the scapula. Anterior aspect, the clavicle, and deltoid is originating from the clavicle. Here deltoid is originating from the scapula, the crest of the spine of the scapula, and laterally the acromion. Insertion, it is inserted to deltoid tuberosity of the humerus. Deltoid tuberosity of the humerus is placed on the lateral aspect of the humerus, so it is inserted there. Nerve supply is by axillary nerve, root value C5 and C6. Axillary nerve is coming from the brachial plexus. So the origin of deltoid, anterior view, posterior view, and insertion to the humerus. Actions, the acromial fibers are powerful abductors of the arm at the shoulder joint, and its action is 15 degree to 90 degree. Acromial fibers are the fibers which are originating from the acromion of the scapula, and these causes abduction of the shoulder from 15 degree to 90 degree. 0 to 15 degree is caused by supraspinatus. Now anterior fibers which are originating from the clavicle, they are flexors and medial rotators of the arm. Posterior fibers which are originating from the scapula, the crest of the scapula, they are extensors and lateral rotators of the arm. So three fibers are having three actions. Clinical importance is that the intramuscular injections are often given into the deltoid. They should be given in the lower half of the muscle to avoid injury to the axillary nerve. Axillary nerve is closely related to the deltoid muscle onto the medial aspect of it, where it is encircling the surgical neck of the humerus. So this relation should be kept in mind while giving intramuscular injections, because if injections are given on the upper half, there is a chance that the nerve can get damaged. So it should be given in the lower half only, because upper half the muscle is related deeply with the axillary nerve, whereas the lower half it is not related. There are some structures which are under the cover of deltoid. Muscles like pectoralis major, minor. Pectoralis minor is a muscle which is deep to pectoralis major. Coracobrachialis, both head of biceps brachii. Biceps brachii is a muscle of the arm. Latissimus dorsi, Long head of triceps. Triceps is a muscle in the posterior aspect of the arm. Rotator cuff muscles. These muscles are placed under the cover of deltoid. There are bones which are related under the cover of deltoid. They are coracoid process of the scapula, lesser and greater tubercle, greater and lesser tubercle of the humerus, intertubercular sulcus, upper part of shaft, and surgical neck of humerus. And there are some joints and ligaments which are related under the deltoid. Shoulder joint is a joint between the scapula and the humerus, and its ligaments like coracoacromial ligament. Coracoacromial ligament is bridging coracoid process to the acromion. Bursas are also related. Bursas are synovial outpoaching, synovial membrane. They are actually seen in between the structures which undergoes friction. Subacromial bursa is placed below the acromion process. Some vessels and nerves. Anterior and posterior circumflex humeral vessels. They are encircling the surgical neck of the humerus. Axillary nerve is also related to surgical neck of humerus. These structures are related below the deltoid. Next muscle here is supraspinatus, originating from medial 2/3 of supraspinous fossa of the scapula. So supraspinous fossa, the medial aspect of it. So supraspinous fossa is a fossa which is seen on the dorsal aspect of the scapula above the spine of scapula. Insertion is to the upper impression of greater tubercle of humerus. So greater tubercle has got 3 impressions. Greater tubercle is here. Upper impression. So the supraspinatus is inserted to the upper impression of the greater tubercle of the humerus. Inserts in this way. Action initiates abduction of the arm and carries it up to 15 degree. So the initial abduction of the arm is caused by supraspinatus muscle up to 15 degree. Now 50 to 90 degrees is done by deltoid muscle. Deltoid. Infraspinatus originating from the infraspinous fossa, medial 2/3. Insertion, middle impression on greater tubercle of humerus. So it's inserted to one of the middle impression of the humerus. So it has got upper impression where supraspinatus is inserting, middle impression where infraspinatus is inserting. Action, lateral rotator of the arm. Since the muscle is covering the shoulder joint from behind, it can act on the shoulder joint by rotating it laterally. Nerve supplies by supraspinatus and infraspinatus are supplied by suprascapular nerve. Suprascapular nerve is coming from the brachial plexus. It passes through suprascapular notch, which is below the ligament, and then supplies supraspinatus muscle. It passes through spinoglenoid notch, then it supplies infraspinatus muscle. Rotator cuff muscles. So these muscles are called sits muscles. They stabilize the shoulder joint. Shoulder joint is weak when compared to other joints of the body, but it gives a lot of mobility. So the strength is compromised, the stability is compromised for the movement in case of shoulder joint. So there are ligaments which are supporting the shoulder joint, but the issue here is the glenoid cavity of the scapula is very shallow while comparing to the head of the humerus, which articulates with it. So as I said, there are some ligaments which are supporting it, and there are some muscles, a group of muscles which covers the shoulder joint from all around, anteriorly, posteriorly, superiorly. Inferiorly it is not covered, but otherwise all around shoulder joint is covered by muscles. These muscles are supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor, subscapularis. Supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor. So these muscles and subscapularis from the front. So supraspinatus placed superiorly, infraspinatus posteriorly, teres minor also placed posteriorly, anteriorly subscapularis. So all these muscles, they, when they reach the humerus or when they reach the shoulder joint, they blend with each other and they form a covering for the shoulder joint, and it is for the stabilization of the shoulder joint. So these muscles are supra, S, supraspinatus, I, infraspinatus, T, teres minor, and S, subscapularis. Actions of the muscles are also given. Supraspinatus causes abduction, infraspinatus causes external rotation or lateral rotation, teres minor causes lateral rotation, subscapularis causes medial rotation. Teres minor originating from upper two-thirds of dorsal surface of the lateral border of scapula. So it is originating from the upper aspect. Insertion, lowest impression on the greater tubercle of humerus. I said before that greater tubercle has got 3 impressions: upper, middle and lower. Upper supraspinatus, middle infraspinatus, and the lower impression is for teres minor. Teres minor again seen here. Action will be lateral rotation of the arm. Nerve which is supplying it is axillary nerve. Axillary nerve supplying the deltoid muscle also teres minor. Subscapularis originating from medial two-thirds of subscapular fossa. Subscapular fossa is seen anteriorly. Insertion to the lesser tubercle of humerus. Action, medial rotation and adductor of arm. Nerve supplies by upper and lower subscapular nerve. So there are 2 nerves supplying this muscle, upper and lower subscapular nerve. They are arising from the posterior cord of brachial plexus. Teres major, anterior view of the teres major, posterior view of teres major. Teres major is originating from lower 1/3 of the dorsal surface of the lateral border and inferior angle of scapula. So it is originating from the lateral border but lower aspect. Upper aspect gives origin to teres minor. Always remember, minors are above, majors are below. So here teres minor is above, teres major is below. Insertion to medial lip of bicipital groove. Bicipital groove has got lateral lip and medial lip. Medial lip gives insertion for teres major, whereas the lateral lip give insertion for pectoralis major. Anyway, so insertion is to the medial lip of bicipital groove. Action, medial rotator of the arm and adductor of arm. Nerve supply, lower subscapular nerve. So we have seen that upper subscapular nerve and lower subscapular nerve. Lower subscapular nerve supplies the subscapularis and it also supplies teres major. Now let's see the muscles of the arm. So arm is divided into anterior and posterior compartment by extensions of deep fascia, which are called medial and lateral intermuscular septa. The cross section of the arm where the humerus can be seen, and the deep fascia which is surrounding the muscles sends septa from either side, from the medial aspect and from the lateral aspect. They meet the bone, and now because of the bone and this septa, medial and lateral intermuscular septa, the area is divided into 2 parts: anterior part which is in front of the bone and the septa, and a posterior compartment which is behind the bone and the intermuscular septa. Now we are going to see muscles of anterior compartment of the arm. Muscles of the anterior compartment of the arm are also called as flexor muscles, whereas muscles of the posterior compartment are called extensor group of muscles. Now the muscles here are coracobrachialis, biceps brachii, brachialis. Coracobrachialis is a small muscle originating from tip of coracoid process inserted to middle 5 cm of medial border of humerus. Action: flexion of the arm at shoulder joint. It crosses the shoulder joint, so it can act on the shoulder joint. Nerve supply: musculocutaneous nerve. Musculocutaneous nerve is a branch arising from the brachial plexus, specifically lateral cord of brachial plexus. Can be seen here. Musculocutaneous nerve supplying coracobrachialis. Musculocutaneous nerve pierces coracobrachialis. Biceps brachii originating as two heads, that is why biceps, bi means two, short head and long head. Short head is originating from tip of coracoid process. So you have seen coracobrachialis is also originating from tip of coracoid process, and long head is originating from supraglenoid tubercle, which is seen on the scapula. Now long head is passing through the bicipital groove, so it is a structure of bicipital groove. Now both of these heads unite and forms the belly of the muscle, which is inserted to the radial tuberosity of the radius, and while insertion, bicipital aponeurosis also formed. Bicipital aponeurosis is an expansion of the biceps muscle, and this is inserted to the posterior border of the ulna and also blends with the deep fascia of the forearm. So insertion, there are two entities. One, as a tendon, it is inserted to the radial tuberosity of the radius, and as an aponeurosis, that forms bicipital aponeurosis, and that inserted to the posterior border of the ulna. Actions. So first action of biceps is, it's a strong supinator when the forearm is flexed, and all screwing movements are done with it. And in addition to that, it is a flexor of elbow because it crosses the elbow joint anteriorly, so it can be a flexor of the arm. Flexor of the elbow. And the short head, since it is crossing the shoulder joint, it can act on the shoulder as a flexor. So supination is the primary action, and other actions are flexion of the forearm, flexion of shoulder joint. Nerve supplies again by musculocutaneous nerve. Musculocutaneous nerve piercing the coracobrachialis muscle comes out and supply the biceps brachii. Biceps brachii. The long head can be seen attaching to the supraglenoid tubercle, passing through the bicipital groove. The next muscle here, which is deep to biceps brachii. So when the biceps brachii is cut, the muscle that is seen is brachialis, which is originating from anterior surface of the humerus, insertion to coronoid process and ulnar tuberosity of the ulna. Ulnar tuberosity and the coronoid process of the ulna. Action: flexion of the forearm at the elbow joint. So this muscle is the primary flexor of the forearm, the main muscle causing the flexion of the forearm, that is brachialis. It crosses the elbow joint anteriorly. Nerve supply is by musculocutaneous nerve and radial nerve. So this muscle is supplied by two nerves. These type of muscles are called hybrid muscles. Musculocutaneous nerve supplies, in addition to brachialis, the biceps brachii and coracobrachialis. The muscles of posterior compartment of the arm. There is a single muscle here, that is triceps brachii. Triceps brachii has got 3 heads. Tri means 3. So origin from long head of infraglenoid tubercle, that is from the scapula. This is a long head. Medial head. Okay, let's talk about lateral head. Lateral head is originating from the posterior surface of the humerus. Below that, the medial head is also originating, which is very deep. Here lateral head is cut to show the medial head deeper. Long head, lateral head. When the lateral head is cut, the deeper aspect, medial head can be seen. Also the radial groove of the humerus can be seen here. Insertion to the olecranon process of the ulna. Action, powerful extensor of the elbow, and the nerve supply is radial nerve. Radial nerve is the largest nerve from the brachial plexus that passes through the radial groove. Now let's see the forearm. Now, as we have seen, the arm divided into flexor and extensor compartment by the intermuscular septa. This area is also divided by the intermuscular septa into anterior and posterior compartment. So this is a cross section where the radius and ulna can be seen, and the intermuscular septa are medial and lateral intermuscular septa that are attached to the bones. Here one difference is, or one thing which is extra here is, which you have not seen in the arm, is interosseous membrane, which is connecting radius and ulna. So now here the intermuscular septa, the bones and the interosseous membrane divides this area into 2 parts: anterior compartment or volar compartment, posterior compartment or dorsal compartment. Anterior compartment or it is also called flexor compartment. Posterior compartment is also called extensor compartment. It is called flexor compartment because it causes flexion of the wrist. The muscles of this area causes flexion of the wrist, whereas muscles of this region causes extension of the wrist. Anterior compartment demarcated from posterior compartment, that we have seen already how it is demarcated medially by olecranon process and posterior border of ulna. So medially we have the olecranon process and the posterior border of ulna, which is demarcating the anterior compartment. Laterally from the anterior border of, or by the anterior border of radius. So anterior border of radius also comes into this area. Now what are the contents of this? The muscles are 8 here, and which are arranged in 2 groups: superficial 5 muscles, deep 3 muscles. Vessels are radial ulnar artery. Radial and ulnar artery are branches of brachial artery. Common interosseous branch of ulnar artery, which divides into anterior and posterior interosseous branches. Nerves that you are going to see here are median ulnar nerves, anterior interosseous branch of median nerve. So I have just listed the contents. We will be seeing contents in different classes. In this class we are concentrating onto the muscles. So the flexor muscles of the forearm, this is an anterior view where the superficial flexors can be seen. They are 5 in number. They have got a common origin, and that is medial epicondyle of the humerus. All of the muscles are crossing the elbow joint, and these muscles are named as pronator teres, flexor carpi radialis, palmaris longus, flexor digitorum superficialis, flexor carpi ulnaris, and muscles with additional origin. So we have seen that muscles are originating from medial epicondyle of the humerus, but there are some muscles which has some other origin. They are pronator teres, flexor carpi ulnaris, flexor digitorum superficialis. There are three deep flexors. When the superficial muscles are removed, the deeper muscles can be seen. They are flexor pollicis longus, flexor digitorum profundus, which is lying deep to flexor digitorum superficialis, pronator quadratus, which is lying almost horizontally. Now let's see the muscles one by one. Pronator teres. The origin of pronator teres is by humeral head, originating from the humerus, ulnar head, which is called deep head, originating from the ulna, superficial and deep head. Humeral head is originating from lower part of medial supracondylar ridge and medial epicondyle. Ulnar head is originating from medial border of coronoid process of ulna. So pronator teres origin can be seen from the ulna, and this is from the radius. This is from the humerus. Okay, humeral head and ulnar head. So here only ulnar head is shown. Insertion by a flat tendon onto the middle of the lateral surface of radius. So insertion is onto the radius. Nerve supplies by median nerve. Median nerve, again, it's a branch of brachial plexus. Here the pronator teres can be seen, originating from the humerus and the ulna. Actions of this muscle are pronation of the forearm. It also flexes the elbow, but it is a weak flexor of the elbow. So this is a pronated hand where the pronator teres is acting, causing pronation. The next muscle here is flexor carpi radialis. Flexor carpi radialis, originating from medial epicondyle of the humerus, inserted to the palmar surface of the base of second and third metacarpal bones. Nerve supplies by median nerve. Median nerve is a branch of brachial plexus. It has contribution from lateral cord and the medial cord of brachial plexus, and it supplies. Action, flexor of the wrist. It causes flexion of the wrist. And along with extensor carpi radialis longus, which is a muscle seen on the dorsal aspect, extensor carpi radialis brevis, this muscle is also seen on the extensor aspect. It can cause abduction of the wrist. So when the muscle is acting alone, it can cause flexion of the wrist, but when the muscle is acting along with these two, it causes abduction of the wrist, because these muscles are seen on the extensor aspect and they are seen on the radial side. So there are two muscles or two groups of muscles can be seen here. One muscle which we are discussing now, that is flexor carpi radialis, which is seen on the flexor aspect but on to the radial side. Similarly, another muscle or another two muscles which are seen on the extensor aspect towards the radial side, they are extensor carpi radialis longus and extensor carpi radialis brevis. So both of these muscles, these two and flexor carpi radialis, when they act together, it can cause abduction of wrist, because usually these muscles causes extension if they are acting alone, and when this muscle is acting alone, it causes flexion of the wrist. Now when these two group, this one and this one, when they act together, flexion and extension are nullified, and instead of that another action occurs, that is abduction. So flexor carpi radialis, this area, it is inserted, second and third metacarpals. Palmaris longus, it is a small muscle. It can be absent as well in some cases, which is originating from medial epicondyle of the humerus. Insertion, it continues as the palmar aponeurosis. Palmar aponeurosis is a deep fascia modification in the hand on the palmar aspect or on the anterior aspect. Nerve supply, median nerve. Action, weak flexor of wrist because it crosses the wrist anteriorly. Flexor carpi ulnaris, medial most muscle originating from the humerus and the ulna. Humeral head is from medial epicondyle of the humerus. Flexor carpi ulnaris originating from the humerus. Ulnar head from the medial margin of olecranon process and posterior border of ulna. Insertion to the pisiform bone. Pisiform bone is a bone in the carpal region, or it is one of the carpal bone, and from the pisiform it has some ligaments called pisohamate ligament and pisometacarpal ligament. So pisohamate ligament, through which it is attached to the hamate bone, and through pisometacarpal ligament it is attached to the fifth metacarpal bone. So flexor carpi ulnaris attached to the pisiform, from pisiform to hamate bone through pisohamate ligament, from pisiform to the metacarpal, fifth metacarpal through pisometacarpal ligament. Flexor carpi ulnaris. Okay, can be seen here, this area, and this is flexor carpi ulnaris. Nerve supply of flexor carpi ulnaris is the ulnar nerve. Ulnar nerve is arising from the brachial plexus from the medial cord. It causes flexion of the wrist, and along with extensor carpi ulnaris, which is another muscle seen on the dorsal aspect, it causes adduction of wrist, because extensor carpi ulnaris is seen on the posterior compartment of the forearm on the ulnar side, and flexor carpi ulnaris is a muscle that is seen on the flexor aspect on the ulnar side. So both of them, when they act together, flexion and extension nullified, and another action occurs, that is adduction of the wrist. Now flexor digitorum superficialis, a broad muscle originating as two heads, humero-ulnar head and radial head. Humero-ulnar head originating from the humerus and the ulna. From the humerus it is medial epicondyle of the humerus, and the ulna medial margin of coronoid process. Radial head originating from the radius, whole length of anterior oblique line of the radius. Flexor digitorum superficialis originating from the radius and also from the ulna can be seen. This is anterior oblique line of the radius. Insertion, the belly divides into four tendons above the wrist, and at the base of the proximal phalanx each digit tendon. So these tendons, there are four tendons, they go to the four medial fingers. Now let's talk about one tendon. What happens to one tendon? When it reaches the proximal phalanx, it splits into two, and it is attached to the side of shaft of middle phalanx of medial four fingers. Now it is inserted to the middle phalanx on either side. So each tendon, when it reaches near the proximal phalanx, it divides into two and it is inserted to the middle phalanx. This happens for all the medial four fingers. But remember, it is not giving any tendon to the thumb. Nerve supply is median nerve. Median nerve is having a close relation with the flexor digitorum superficialis, and it supplies it. So these are the insertion points of flexor digitorum superficialis. Action of flexion of middle phalanx at proximal interphalangeal joint. So this muscle causes flexion of middle phalanx. So middle phalanx can be flexed at proximal interphalangeal joint, and in prolonged contraction it can even flex metacarpophalangeal joint and the wrist as well. Now this is flexor digitorum superficialis splitting into two when it reaches the proximal phalanx. We can also see that there is another muscle that is passing through the gap between this split tendon of flexor digitorum superficialis, and that is another muscle. This is flexor digitorum profundus. This is a simplified diagram, or easy way to remember the muscles here by keeping your hand and the fingers represent the muscles of the flexor compartment of forearm, starting from lateral to medial, pronator teres, flexor carpi radialis, palmaris longus, flexor carpi ulnaris. Another muscle here that you can remember is flexor digitorum superficialis, which lies little deeper to these four muscles. Deep flexors are flexor pollicis longus, we have already seen that, flexor digitorum profundus, and pronator quadratus. Let's see each muscles. Flexor pollicis longus. It is originating from anterior surface of shaft of the radius below anterior oblique line. Introitious membrane. Introitious membrane is bridging radius and ulna. Insertion is to the palmar surface of the base of the distal phalanx of the thumb. Nerve supplies by anterior introitious branch of median nerve. So median nerve, it gives a branch called anterior introitious nerve, which is seen very close to the anterior introitious or anterior aspect of the introitious membrane. So since it is very close to introitious membrane anteriorly, it is called anterior introitious nerve. It is a branch of median nerve. So the deeper muscles are usually supplied by anterior introitious nerve of median nerve. Anyway, I'll just list the muscles and nerve supply at the end of it so we can understand better. So right now remember that anterior introitious nerve is a branch of median nerve. Action, flexion of the thumb. Flexor digitorum profundus. So it looks like flexor digitorum superficialis, but this is lying in a deeper aspect. Originating from anterior and medial surface of upper 3/4 of shaft of ulna. A large area of origin, including medial surface of coronoid and olecranon process, adjoining introitious membrane, and upper 3/4 of posterior border of ulna. So it even goes to the posterior aspect. So a broad origin. Flexor digitorum profundus. Insertion. Now it forms 4 tendons like flexor digitorum superficialis, and it inserted to the palmar surface of base of terminal phalanx of medial forefingers. So after dividing into 4 tendons, it passes through flexor retinaculum and then it reaches onto the medial 4 fingers. Now each tendon will pass between the split tendon of flexor digitorum superficialis, and each of it will be attached to the terminal phalanx. of the medial four fingers. Remember again, flexor digitorum profundus is not giving any tendon to the thumb like your flexor digitorum superficialis. Now these are the insertion point of flexor digitorum profundus. Now we can also see that when the flexor digitorum profundus is passing in the hand, some muscles are originating from the tendons of flexor digitorum profundus, and they are called lumbrical muscles. Nerve supply is by two nerves. Medial part of it is supplied by ulnar nerve. Ulnar nerve can be seen. Lateral part is supplied by anterior interosseous branch of median nerve. Action: it causes flexion of terminal phalanx because it is inserted to the terminal phalanx, so it can act on the terminal phalanx. Now no other muscles can act on the terminal phalanx excepting flexor digitorum profundus, because this is the only tendon which reaches up to the terminal phalanx. We have seen that flexor digitorum superficialis, that reaches only up to the middle phalanx, but flexor digitorum profundus, it can reach up to the terminal phalanx. Pronator quadratus. Origin from bony ridge on the anteromedial surface of lower 1/4 of ulna. So it's originating from the ulna. Insertion: anterior surface of lower 1/4 of radius and adjoining anterior border of radius. Nerve supply: anterior interosseous branch of median nerve. Action: it is principal pronator of the forearm and the hand. Now other pronator that we have seen already, that is pronator teres. Flexor retinaculum is a modification of deep fascia which is seen on the anterior aspect of the wrist and holding the structures, especially the tendons, in position. Attachments: medially it is attached to the pisiform bone, hook of hamate. Laterally it is attached to tubercle of scaphoid and the crest of trapezium. There are different tendons and structures passing deep to flexor retinaculum. So it is like a wrist watch. Structures passing superficial to flexor retinaculum. So there are many structures passing deep to it, but there are few structures passing superficial to it. So the structures passing superficial to are tendon of palmaris longus, palmar cutaneous branch of median nerve, that is not seen in this diagram, palmar cutaneous branch of ulnar nerve, ulnar vessels, and ulnar nerve. So they are passing superficial. Flexor retinaculum. Now structures passing deep to it are median nerve, tendon of flexor digitorum superficialis, and tendon of flexor digitorum profundus, tendon of flexor pollicis longus, ulnar bursa, which is encircling the flexor digitorum superficialis profundus, a radial bursa, which is a synovial membrane sheath covering flexor pollicis longus. superficial muscles of the back of forearm. Now let's see the posterior compartment of the forearm, where the superficial muscles will be dealt first, which are 7 in number. So we have seen the flexor compartment of forearm, where we were dividing it into superficial and deep compartment. So here we are again dividing it into superficial and deep muscles. First, let's see the superficial muscles. They are anconeus, brachioradialis, extensor carpi radialis longus, extensor carpi radialis brevis, extensor digitorum, extensor digiti minimi, extensor carpi ulnaris. Now all of the 7 muscles are going to cross the elbow joint, so they can act on elbow joint. Now most of them take origin entirely or in part from the tip of lateral epicondyle of the humerus, and this is common extensor origin. Medial epicondyle was common flexor origin. Let's see each muscles. Anconeus, it's originating from posterior aspect of lateral epicondyle of the humerus, inserted to lateral aspect of olecranon process of ulna. Insertion of anconeus. Nerve supply, radial nerve, C7, C8 and T1. Roots. Action, it is a weak extensor of elbow. It crosses the elbow joint posteriorly, so it is a weak extensor of the elbow. Brachioradialis is originating from upper 2/3 of lateral supracondylar ridge of humerus, lateral intermuscular septa. So this intermuscular septa of the arm. Insertion, lateral side of radius just above styloid process. Nerve supply is radial nerve. Origin of brachioradialis from the lateral supracondylar ridge, upper 2/3. Actions of brachioradialis, it's a flexor of forearm, because this muscle, even though it is a muscle which is in the extensor compartment, structurally speaking, this muscle crosses the elbow anteriorly, so it can flex the forearm, especially in mid-prone position. When the forearm is in mid-prone position, it's act better. Supinates the fully pronated forearm. It can supinate a fully pronated forearm and pronates a fully supinated forearm to bring into mid-prone position. So it can bring to a mid-prone position. So the forearm is brought to mid-prone position by brachioradialis. Extensor carpi radialis longus, originating from lower 1/3 of lateral supracondylar ridge, upper 2/3 is for brachioradialis. So lower 1/3 is for extensor carpi radialis longus, and from common extensor origin. Insertion, dorsum of base of second metacarpal bone. Nerve supply is radial nerve. Actions, extension of the wrist, because it is passing posterior to the wrist, so it can extend the wrist along with extensor carpi ulnaris. Abduction of the wrist along with flexor carpi radialis. So flexor carpi radialis is a muscle of anterior compartment. So both of them when act together, that is flexor carpi radialis and extensor carpi radialis longus, when they act together, flexion extension is nullified. Then the resulting action will be abduction of the wrist. Extensor carpi radialis brevis. Now, brevis means short. So this muscle is short muscle compared to extensor carpi radialis longus, but both are similar muscles originating from the common extensor origin. Now, the location of extensor carpi radialis brevis is just medial to and little deep to extensor carpi radialis longus. Insertion, dorsal aspect of base of second and third metacarpal bones. Nerve supply is by posterior introsus nerve. It is a branch of radial nerve. Now action is similar to extensor carpi radialis longus in that it causes extension of the wrist. So this is representing common extensor origin, a posterior view, lateral condyle, lateral epicondyle of the humerus can be seen. Extensor digitorum, it is originating from common extensor origin. Extensor digitorum looks like flexor digitorum superficialis and flexor digitorum profundus, which is seen on the anterior compartment of forearm. Insertion. Now the muscle ends in a tendon which splits into 4 parts. So muscle is dividing into 4 tendons, one for each digit other than the thumb. So it is not going to the thumb, but it goes to the medial 4 fingers. Now over the proximal phalanx, when it reaches the proximal phalanx, so this is the tendon of extensor digitorum reaching the proximal phalanx. It divides into 3 slips, 1 intermediate and 2 collateral. So 1 intermediate tendon and 2 collateral tendons. The intermediate slip is inserted to the dorsal aspect of base of middle phalanx. So it goes to the middle phalanx. This is middle phalanx, proximal phalanx and distal phalanx. So the middle slip goes to the middle phalanx, whereas the collateral slips, they move on the sides and they will be inserted. Before insertion they join with each other and they are inserted to the dorsum of distal phalanx. So a tendon divides into 3 slips, middle one inserted to the middle phalanx, the other 2 unites and inserted to distal phalanx. Dorsal digital expansion is a triangular flat sheet of aponeurosis related with the tendon of extensor digitorum. So this is a modification of deep fascia again related to the extensor digitorum muscle found on the dorsum aspect of the proximal phalanx, and it is also called extensor hood. Now extensor expansion provides insertion for the lumbrical muscles, interosseous muscles and extensor indicis, extensor digiti minimi and also extensor digitorum muscles. So here the lumbricals and interosseous are inserted to the dorsal digital expansion. Nerve supply of this muscle is by posterior interosseous nerve. Action. So posterior interosseous nerve is a branch from the radial nerve. Radial nerve giving posterior interosseous nerve. This nerve is related to the posterior aspect of interosseous membrane. Action, extension of interphalangeal, metacarpophalangeal and wrist joints. So it is acting on all the joints which it is crossing. Extensor digiti minimi. Extensor digiti minimi is lying medial to extensor digitorum, originating from common extensor origin. Insertion, the tendon joins the tendon of extensor digitorum for the fifth digit. Already extensor digitorum sends a tendon to the little finger, and extensor digiti minimi also get inserted to the little finger, and it blends with dorsal digital expansion for the insertion. Nerve supply is by posterior introsus nerve. Action: extension of the little finger at the interphalangeal joints, metacarpophalangeal joints. Interphalangeal joints are the joints between the phalanx. Metacarpophalangeal joint is the joint between the metacarpal and the phalanx. So this is metacarpophalangeal joint, and this is interphalangeal joint. Extensor carpi ulnaris, which is the most medial muscle, again medial to extensor digiti minimi, originating as a common extensor origin and also posterior border of ulna. Posterior border of ulna from this area. Insertion. So here extensor carpi ulnaris origin can be seen. Extensor carpi ulnaris, yes, this one, origin from the posterior border of the ulna, inserted to base of the fifth metacarpal bone on the medial side of it. Fifth metacarpal bone. Nerve supply is posterior introsus nerve. Actions. So there are two muscles which is shown here: flexor carpi radialis and flexor carpi ulnaris is shown here. We'll see when we see the action of it why we have put this diagram here. So action of extensor carpi ulnaris is extension of the wrist along with extensor carpi radialis longus and brevis. So along with these two muscles, that is extensor carpi radialis longus and brevis, it causes extension of the wrist because all these muscles are passing posterior to the wrist joint, whereas adduction of the hand along with flexor carpi ulnaris. So flexor carpi ulnaris is a muscle which is seen on the flexor compartment of the forearm, and it is seen on the medial side. Similarly, the extensor carpi ulnaris, which is a muscle seen on the medial side but on the dorsal aspect. So when these two muscles, that is flexor carpi ulnaris and extensor carpi ulnaris, when they act together, the flexion and the extension get nullified and adduction of the wrist occurs. Now coming to the deep group, these muscles can be seen when we remove the superficial muscles. They are supinator, abductor pollicis longus, extensor pollicis brevis, extensor pollicis longus, extensor indicis. Supinator, it is originating from two heads: superficial head originating from lateral epicondyle of the humerus, deep is originating from the supinator crest of ulna. So superficial and deep head can be seen. Later they joins with each other and wrapping the upper end of the wrist, posterior view and an anterior view where it is wrapping the radius. Supinator insertion point on the radius, this area. Insertion, upper 1/3 of lateral surface of the radius. Nerve supply is posterior introsus nerve. Action is supination of forearm. Abductor pollicis longus. Abductor pollicis longus origin. Upper parts of posterior surface of ulna and the radius, and also introsus membrane. Ulna, radius, introsus membrane. Insertion, The tendon usually splits into two parts, but in this diagram it is not there, but usually they split and they are inserted to the lateral side of base of first metacarpal. So inserted to the base of first metacarpal, abductor pollicis longus. And if it is dividing into two tendons, the other part may get attached to the trapezium, but usually it ends as a single tendon and they are attached, or it will be attached to the base of first metacarpal. Nerve supply of it is by posterior introsus nerve. Action, abduction and extension of the thumb at the carpo-metacarpal joint. Carpo-metacarpal joint is between the carpal bone and the metacarpal. Extensor pollicis brevis. This muscle is deep to, or you can say medial to abductor pollicis longus, little deeper. Origin, posterior surface of the radius. Extensor pollicis brevis, this side, right? Yeah. So it is from the posterior surface of the radius, below the origin of abductor pollicis longus, and from the interosseous membrane. So radius below the origin of abductor pollicis longus and the interosseous membrane. Insertion on the dorsal surface of base of proximal phalanx of the thumb. Now this goes to the proximal phalanx of the thumb. The thumb has two phalanx, proximal and distal phalanx, so it goes up to the proximal phalanx. Nerve supply is posterior interosseous nerve. Action, it can extend the proximal phalanx and metacarpophalangeal joint of the thumb, because it is crossing metacarpophalangeal joint and the proximal interphalangeal joint of the thumb. Extensor pollicis longus. This muscle again lying medial to extensor pollicis brevis, originating from the posterior surface of the ulna, below the origin of abductor pollicis longus, and also from interosseous membrane. Insertion, this is inserted to the distal phalanx of the thumb on the dorsal aspect. Nerve supply is posterior interosseous nerve. Action, extension at all joints of the thumb. It can act on metacarpophalangeal joints, interphalangeal joints, carpo-metacarpal joints. Now there are three muscles which are going to the thumb: abductor pollicis longus, extensor pollicis brevis, extensor pollicis longus. Now abductor pollicis longus inserted to the base of the first metacarpal, extensor pollicis brevis attached to the proximal phalanx, whereas extensor pollicis longus, it is inserted to the distal phalanx. Extensor indicis. So it means it goes to the index finger, originating from, so let's see the extensor indicis, this area, originating from the posterior surface of the ulna, below the origin of extensor pollicis longus and interosseous membrane. Insertion, the tendon joins with the ulnar side of the tendon of extensor digitorum for the index finger. Extensor digitorum divides into four tendons. It also goes to the index finger, and extensor indicis is meant for the index finger. So extensor indicis tendon joins with the tendon of extensor digitorum for the index finger on the medial side. This is extensor indicis. Extensor indicis going to the index finger, blending with dorsal digital expansion. Nerve supply, posterior interosseous nerve. Radial nerve gives posterior interosseous nerve. Action, extension of the index finger specifically, and it helps to extend the wrist because it is blending with the dorsal digital expansion, so it can extend the wrist. Extensor retinaculum is similar to flexor retinaculum, but this is seen on the extensor aspect of the wrist, and this holds the tendons in position. The deep fascia of the back of the wrist is thickened to form the extensor retinaculum, which holds the extensor tendons in place. Attachments: laterally it is attached to the lower part of anterior border of the radius, and medially it is attached, laterally it is attached to the radius, and medially it is attached to tricutril and pisiform bones, medially. Now retinaculum sends down septa, which are attached to the longitudinal ridges on the posterior surface of lower end of radius. Now this band sends the septa deeper. The septa goes deeper and then they get attached to the radius. So in this way there are 6 facial compartments which is formed on the back of wrist. Now there are 6 compartments from lateral to medial. There are 6 compartments. So each compartment has some structures passing through it. The first compartment, which is the lateral most part, it contains 2 muscles: abductor pollicis longus, extensor pollicis brevis. So first compartment is somewhere here and the last compartment is on this side. So the first compartment we have abductor pollicis longus, extensor pollicis brevis. The second compartment consisting of extensor carpi radialis longus, extensor carpi radialis brevis. The third compartment has a muscle, extensor pollicis longus. The fourth compartment has extensor digitorum, extensor indicis, and posterior interosseous nerve along with an artery, anterior interosseous artery. Anterior interosseous artery is a branch of common interosseous artery. Extensor digiti minimi in the fifth compartment, and the last one, extensor carpi ulnaris. Now the next area is hand. So hand has skin, superficial fascia, and here it is known as there is a muscle in the superficial fascia, and that muscle is known as palmaris brevis on the medial side, and there is a deep fascia modified here as flexor retinaculum, triangular structure. Flexor retinaculum is here. This is palmar aponeurosis. It is also a modification of deep fascia, and this is flexor retinaculum. And flexor fibrous sheath, which is seen near the fingers. We will see each in detail. Flexor retinaculum. So we have seen already flexor retinaculum, which is bridging the carpal bones anteriorly, allowing some structures to pass through deep to it, and some are passing superficial to it. Palmar aponeurosis is a triangular shaped condensation of deep fascia that covers the palm and is anchored to the skin in the distal regions. The apex of the triangle, so base is here, apex of the triangle is continuing with palmaris longus tendon. So palmaris longus muscle is continuing as palmar aponeurosis in the hand. Now Dupuytren's contracture is an inflammation of the palmar aponeurosis that leads to this contracture, and there will be thickening and contracture of palmar aponeurosis affecting proximal and middle phalanges, which are acutely flexed, and ring finger is most commonly affected. So this happens due to or after the effect of inflammation to the palmar aponeurosis.